Hi, everybody. This is the SOM TV podcast. My name is Jason Wise. Very exciting stuff with a tiny tinge of, big tinge of sadness, I suppose. We have our live watch coming with Steven Spurrier of the film Bottle Shock. So I have a film coming out this summer, late summer, about the Judgment of Paris. The true, real, completely untold story involving everybody. All the men and women who made that event happen, but also more about its effects and how the hell we got there in the first place. It involves prohibition and all sorts of stuff. During that process, and of course SOM 3 and a number of other things, I became good friends with Steven Spurrier, and he taught me more probably in the 3 or 4 years that I knew him than, I learned in 15 years prior about wine and also a little bit about life. When we were doing a pre-production interview, I asked him, could we watch Bottle Shock together? And he told me he had only seen it one time, but he would watch it with me. So we fire up Zoom on his end in Dorset, England, and on my end in Los Angeles. And we watched the film together. And I wasn't sure we were going to use this for anything. I wanted it kind of just to see what would happen. It's great. And we were going to put it up in May or June, somewhere in that time. But now we're putting it up now on SOM TV. So it might be up right now or up in the next few coming days when this podcast launches. So what I thought we would do is to take the first 15, 16 minutes of it before the movie starts and let you guys get a preview of kind of what Steven and I talk about. Steven is on Zoom audio. My audio will be cleaner, so I apologize for that. But once you settle in, it's pretty great. I just want to say something. This was one of the honors of my life to sit and do this with him. A lot of fun. And those of you who know the rumors about Bottle Shock being slightly historically inaccurate and that Steven didn't like it, you're in for a nice little ride here. All right. So without further ado, Mr. Spurrier. But before we do that, SOMTV.com is $49.99 for the year, $5.99 a month. There's lots of excuses for you to be a subscriber. This is definitely one of them. Here is a preview of the first 15 minutes. Thank you all very much. It's an honor to have you here. How are you feeling? Cooped up?
Well, cooped up. Well, no, I can't say I'm cooped up because we go for walks. We were in the vineyard this afternoon. I'm having a very good time, but it's all in slow motion. And I'm not accustomed to having my life in slow motion.
Yeah, you're not somebody who lives in slow motion. I'm very aware of your lifestyle, and it's in fast motion. How do you feel with the anniversary of the Judgment of Paris coming up? How do you feel about this?
A big German Sunday newspaper called Welt am Sonntag, The World on Sunday, which is doing something on it, and they've asked me for a comment. I was on a video call last night with a bunch of young wine students at Cornell and kind of all over, and they were thrilled to talk to a legend, for instance. But I mean, I was thrilled to talk to them because they're the future. And I did a video with Jean Charbois last week, which is mostly on Bride Valley, but of course it was about the Judgment of Paris. And then another video, really brilliant, with Violet Gergich and Mike Gergich and Eva, the winemaker, and Joanne Dupuis. We tasted the Paris Tasting Chardonnay from Gergich Hills 2017. So it's very much in the air. And I didn't think it would be. I mean, this is 44th anniversary is better than 43rd. But people are making quite a fuss about it.
Well, I mean, it's, look, it is, normally if somebody would say they're a legend, I would say, I don't know, but you kind of, within your field, Steven, you are. I mean, you're also somebody that I haven't met many people that don't like you. I personally, one of the greatest things that's come out of me making these movies is meeting you and becoming your friend. I mean, I genuinely like to see you. Every time I get a chance to hang out with you, I learn so much more. And instead of, your humility is second to none when it comes to someone who's accomplished things in a field like this.
Well, I mean, I think I was lucky to start off with two great advantages. One was money and one was time. And so, and I got a lot of help. So I've had a good time. And so I certainly don't feel like showing off about what I've achieved because I enjoyed doing it. It was part of what I did. So there's no point in my getting a big head about it just because it was all part of my life.
Makes sense. But I mean, of course, because of this being famous, you have things like I directed Psalm 3 directly because of the event you did. That's why we made the movie. Bottle Shock was made. I should ask you before we watch the movie and just talk through it, well, how do you feel about your life and what you've done being portrayed like this? Not just Bottle Shock, but my film and other medium. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, it was a complicated story because Hollywood contacted me before Bottle Shock even came along. And a small production company had the idea to make a movie called The Judgment of Paris. Okay. But they were a kind of mom and pop operation. And I gave them the go ahead. And they were wondering who was going to play me, whether it would be Jude Law or Grant.
So your options were Hugh Grant and Jude Law to play you.
Yeah. So I told them that Hugh Grant was too old and Jude Law was too good looking. But that seemed to go ahead. And then suddenly, out of the blue, came this Bottle Shock idea. And what was extremely plain to me, in fact, it is a fact, is the Montalena boys, Jim Barrett, got wind of the idea there was going to be a movie called The Judgment of Paris. And it was very plain to them that a movie can only talk about one wine. And this movie was going to talk about Stag's Leap, obviously. And so they basically, Barrett put $1 million on the table to have a script written about Montalena. And this mom and pop operation got terribly scared. And they said, can you please stop this? I said, well, how the hell can I stop it? It's out of my control. And so they sent me a script of Bottle Shock, which they'd got. And it was indeed defamatory to me, very defamatory. And luckily, my son Christian is married to the head of BBC Films. And Christine put me in touch with the head intellectual property lawyers, Olswang, and I've sent them the script with all my comments, and they said, right, we'll get onto this. And they called the lawyers in Hollywood, whose answer was, we didn't even know Mr. Spurrier was still alive. So that showed you the amount of research. No one cared because they just wanted to make this damn fictitious movie. And so they did have to take a few things out of the script. But you'll see when the title comes up on the screen, under it is based on a true story. So with that, they can get away with murder.
We'll watch the film. I have to confess to you, I think take the history out, take the accuracy. It's a fun movie. It's got an amazing cast. Have your feelings settled at all over time, or do you still strongly dislike this?
I think it's a ridiculous movie. It is a fun movie. I entirely agree. People like seeing it. Okay. Bo Barrett was a gangly 15-year-old at the time. He certainly wasn't the age he was in the movie. I mean, luckily, so Bella says, for God's sake, stop complaining. Who in the wine world has ever had a movie made about them? Nobody except me. And who has ever had them played by Alan Rickman? Nobody. And fortunately, Bella and I had met Alan over several days and years, in fact, in Montalcino, staying on the same estate. And we shared quite a few bottles of Rosso and Brunello together. And so he knew that I wasn't the character in the script. And we tried to meet, and we couldn't in London because he was so tied up with other stuff. And so he called me, and this is a nice story because it's absolutely true. He said, hi, Stephen, sorry we couldn't meet up. I've been too tied up. We're going to start to shoot this movie in Sonoma County in a week's time. And I said, well, Alan, I really don't want this movie to be made, but there it is. He said, well, we're going to start. And so thinking of his age, because he was 63 when he did the movie, young 63, and I was 34 when I did the tasting, so that's 30 years. I said, I guess, Alan, you'll be playing one of the senior French judges. He said, no, I'm playing you. And I just burst out laughing, and I said, best of British luck. He said, I think I'll need it. And so that was it. So that is, that was the exchange of Alan Rickman and myself before he flew to California to start filming.
I mean, look, it's Alan Rickman. I don't know how much of a fan you are of his movies, but I mean, he played probably the greatest villain in an action film in history in Die Hard. He's legendary. So, and then, he passed away and there will never be another Alan Rickman movie. And so to think that one of the tops of his mountain, one of the absolute tops is him playing you. You've got to take some pride in that.
Well, I mean, I think he enjoyed it. It took me about a year to see the movie. And then I was staying with the people in Brunello, in Montalcino. And I said, I've finally seen this movie, but I've lost Alan's email address. Can you give it back to me? So I dropped him a line. I said, Alan, thank you for playing me in such a sympathetic way. I'd just like to point out I didn't wear three-piece suits. He played me as a snob. I said, I'll go along with that. I was a snob, but I didn't wear three-piece suits. And he sent a mail back saying, well, had we not met over several glasses, it would have been a very hard role to play. It would not have been fun to play because I knew you were not the character in the script. Right.
Well, it's, I think the movie now has become sort of legendary, and it did one thing that I think you are a big part of is sharing wine and making people realize that wine is for everyone. And at least the one thing the movie did was it made people go, I want to know more about wine. I want to know more about Napa. And that's been, I'm sure you can find some commonality with at least that's what it's done. And that's what you try to do.
I mean, I think it's just that the bottle shock, the wine turning brown didn't happen. It's completely fictitious. Completely and utterly fictitious. And Mike Gurgich, admittedly, Jim Barrett shook hands with Mike shortly before he died. But Jim was so angry that Mike walked out of Montelena because he was underpaid and undervalued in 75 and started Gurgich Hills, that Jim Barrett wrote Mike Gurgich out of the script. He was out of the bottle shop script, but he denied to all and sundry that Mike had made that wine, which was very, very bad. And it's only, he was dying of cancer, that he called Mike and they got together and they shook hands. And now Bo Barrett has completely rehabilitated Mike. But, that was very stupid.
Yeah.
Not a good move.
Yeah, but I also think, too, it's one of the advantages of having some age as a human. You get to look back and realize I should have done things differently. But, I know Bo Barrett, and I think Montelena is a wonderful place. But I think, look, we're all in the business of selling stuff. And I think Montelena was trying to sell their wine.
It's a fun movie. It's a good story. The little guy wins. It's got its ups and downs. And I mean, people are still watching it. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's still on Netflix. Well, I don't know whether it's on Netflix, but anyway.
It's on Som TV, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
If we remade this movie right now, who would play you? What actor would you like to play you right now? Not in your current age now, but back then. So who alive?
Well, I mean, there was another plan to do a movie called The Judgment of Paris. This went a really long way. And a scriptwriter, very well-known Hollywood scriptwriter who's got a vineyard in Sonoma, his name completely escapes me at the moment, but he wrote The Karate Kid, and he does a lot of work with Luc Besson in Paris. But anyway, he prepared a script, and he interviewed Warren for hours and hours and hours and hours, and he very much admired Warren. And he wrote the true story. And then Warren Wieniawski, having pocketed $165 million for his damn winery, said he didn't want this movie for his legacy. He didn't need it for his legacy, and he took out an injunction against it. And Piero Antinori and Ted Basler, who is the chairman of Chateau Saint-Michel, who owns Stag's Leap, and myself got together, and we wrote a letter to Warren saying, this is not your legacy, Warren. It's California's legacy. It's America's legacy. It's the world's legacy. Will you please back off? And he didn't. And so Robert Kamen was the scriptwriter. And he raised $10 to $15 million and was ready to go. And Warren stopped it. So in that case, I would have been played by one of the younger English actors, but they would have had to have been quite young. And it never got to the point where there was anyone in mind. I know that Bella had a big role in the movie. She was supposed to be played by Claire Foy, who's played the Queen. But anyway, it didn't happen.
Wow. Claire Foy as Bella actually is great casting, because I know your wife, and she is exactly how she played the Queen, strong, but beautiful and sensitive. I mean, your wife is kind of all of those things. She runs a house. That would be very interesting to have seen that rendition. Hey, you know, maybe someday we get to see it. Maybe I get to direct it. Well, so have you ever done anything like this? Watch the movie and talk through it?
No.
Well, I am beyond honored to be the first. If you want to hear the rest of this, which is the entire feature-length film long of what you haven't heard here yet, go to somtv.com and fire up the Bottle Shock live watch with the late great Steven Spurrier and I. Thank you everybody so much for listening, and not going to lie to you, you're going to hear more about our friend Steven coming up, especially with the films we have. Everybody be safe and give the people in your house a hug. Talk soon.